Welcome to Pushing Forward with Alycia, a podcast that gives disability a voice. Each week, we will explore topics like confidence, ambition, resilience, and finding success against all odds. We are creating a collective community that believes that all things are possible for all people. Open hearts, clear paths, let's go. Welcome to the official launch of Pushing Forward with Alycia. I'm Alycia. Thank you so much for listening in. I am so excited. I can't even believe this. This is a project that I've been working on and really excited to launch. A little afraid to launch, to be honest with you, but we're pushing through that. We're pushing forward through fear to move forward to the next stage of this business and platform and everything that I'm doing. So thank you. Welcome. So pumped. This is our podcast. I want this podcast to be a place that is safe and respectful, but allows for open communication and access for everybody to engage and share their stories and perspectives. I'm Alycia. I'm a disabled woman. I'm an empowered disabled woman at this point in my life, but it's taken some time. And what I have found over my life is people are kind of interested in the path that I'm on. I grew up with my disability. I live my life from a wheelchair. The stories and the perspective that you're going to hear from me is that perspective of somebody, a little girl to a woman, living a life with a disability. And this is a conversation that needs to be had more and more and louder and louder. And it needs to be included in advocacy and in the conversations of inclusion that we're having in society today. So that's what we're going to do on this podcast. We're going to dive into pushing forward through the fear that we might have of having these types of conversations. We're going to be open with each other about our backgrounds, our differences, whether you have a disability or not. Conversation and creating community around these things is how we progress as a society, how we progress humanity, how we progress and push forward inclusion for everyone. And it's 2023, so it's time. We're past time. We're taking some active steps. We're going to push forward to advance the human experience together, advance opportunities, advance belief in ourselves, advance the belief that we have in others. As a disabled person, there's been a lot of default of impossible for her, not possible, no way, absolutely not. And this podcast is going to turn off or disable all of that ableism. And it's going to push forward us believing in the possibilities for everyone as a default. And this is going to create further avenues of inclusion. It creates further avenues of allyship where we're going to learn from each other's backgrounds. And most of the time it's going to be from a background that we're unfamiliar with, which is great. And then we're going to take what we've learned, little nuggets, and we're going to implement them and share them in our own lives, in our careers, in some way. I want you to speak up. I want you to offer amazing opportunities to people that you might not have prior. I want you to challenge the status quo. And in doing so, we are creating bridges and pathways that are accessible to every human being in this life. We do this by leaning in to our differences, the things that we might be afraid to lean into, the things that make us different from someone else, leaning into those things as beautiful opportunities to persevere, to manifest the representation that each of us are seeking in our lives, in our careers, in the dreams that we're chasing. I'm here to help us collectively embrace being inclusive by stepping or rolling out of the shadows and into our fullest potentials. And in that, we'll find that these are the moments that matter. These are the really, really, really cool moments that encourage us to push forward again and again and again and again, because it feels good to push through adversity and see what's on the other side of it. Our stories define who has found seats at the table of opportunity. Our stories define who has yet to find a seat at the table of opportunity. And our stories absolutely define whose voices still need to be heard. I'm going to share with you the power of my differences to hopefully encourage you to do the same. And in that, uncover the possibilities in each of our lives by embracing the many layers of who we are and believing that anything is possible. In this path, anything is possible, but we have to be willing to put in the hard work, pushing fear aside and putting in some effort. We're going to talk about some of the topics that I have seen in my life most are afraid of. We're going to talk about disability. It's not a bad word. Let's say it. We're going to talk about ableism and disabling it. We're going to talk about dating, marriage, travel, fitness, all of it with disability included in it. We're going to talk about how I've become a CEO, a woman with a disability that can get the job done. We're going to talk about men and women from our past that are powerful in their space of advocacy. We're going to talk about advocacy. Today, in our second segment, that's the thing that we're going to talk about. That's what we're diving into first. Advocacy, which is something that I was afraid of for a lot of my life. We're going to talk about creating moments that matter. We're going to discover more about the human experience. We're going to discover more about humanity. We're going to discover more about each other. And in that, we're opening our hearts to belief that anything is possible for each and every single one of us and for those that we might have counted out prior. This is an opportunity for us to grow together. We're pushing forward through discrimination, through exclusion, through stereotypes, through marginalization, through ableism, through disbelief. On the other side of all of that is hope. So let's do it together. We're going to take a quick break and then we're going to jump into advocacy. I'm inviting my husband on as our very first special guest. He's my business partner. He's my love. He's everything. And him and I are advocates for disability inclusion together. We're running this business together. So I definitely want him to be the first one on. So we're going to take a quick break and come right back and we're going to talk about advocacy. We talk a lot on the show about ableism and inclusion. If you want to learn more, I invite you to listen to my TEDx talk, Disabling Ableism, the Modern Pathway to Inclusion. You can watch the whole speech on aliciaanderson.com. That's ALYCIA Anderson with an O.com. Click on speaking. I would proudly love to introduce my handsome husband, Marston Anderson. He goes by Marty. He's my business partner. He's my best friend. He helps me create and write and do all kinds of really cool things for our business. And we're going to dive into advocacy together, babe. What do you think?
Awesome. I want to say first, thank you for having me on the Pushing Forward with Alycia podcast. I'm so excited to be the first guest, and I am happy to share all about our experiences and our lives living with disabilities with the community here that we're going to be building. And just want to say I'm so proud of you, and I think that this is awesome to get another little mark on your belt of achievements and all of that. Okay, so let me just kind of introduce myself. I have been a successful web developer for the past 20 years, working in technology, building websites, helping people launch products, helping people promote and grow their services and product offerings, and have been so proud to help build the Alycia Anderson company. Wow, it's been years now that we've been doing this together, and you are the perfect face and have the perfect message to share disability inclusion with the world. And it's been so exciting to help build your website and make everything accessible and listen and hear about all the things that you talk about with all the corporations globally that you speak with and the things that they're challenged with and how you can help bring light and different things to the message and help them overcome their awkwardness in learning and how to include people with disabilities in the workforce and in life.
We're both doing that behind the scenes, though, right? We're creating together. And maybe you can share about you, a little bit about your disability, and so they can get a little bit of framework behind that.
I fell out of a car when I was 22 months old. Just like my wife, I've lived basically my whole life with a disability. My nerves were torn from my spinal cord from my right leg, and as a result, I've used multiple forms of adaptations to get around for mobility. I've used leg braces, crutches, wheelchairs. In fact, I was in a full body cast for 2 years right after the accident. And in my formative years, I sat there immobile and watched. I have 8 sisters, a lot of people in my family. So they were all running around while I was stuck there just watching and observing. And I would get out of that cast and learn to grow up, and was blessed with a very strong mom who was an advocate for me. And she got me into everything that I felt like I wanted to do, from little league, soccer, karate, all playing with able-bodied kids, and then even helped me learn how to play tennis in a wheelchair. She was a tennis player, and I started playing wheelchair tennis at the age of 13. I did very well and was professional in the sport and made it all the way to the Team USA and onto World Team Cup, Team USA in 2010, just before we were married. Love to talk about sports, but today we're talking about pushing forward and introducing the podcast. And I believe we're going to be jumping into advocacy.
This is really sort of the framework around the podcast, which is advocating for inclusion of people with disabilities and really anyone that is different. There was a quote one time I remember saying that was about advocacy, and it said something like, advocacy is to change what is today into what should be tomorrow. For us, like through our life paths, there's been a lot of no's, there's been a lot of exclusion, there's been a lot of, it's been required for, first of all, our parents and our allies to advocate for us to have opportunities that if there wasn't an advocate there advocating for it, we would have been left on the sidelines. And the importance of having a voice and advocating for others is so incredibly powerful. And we've seen that firsthand in our life paths. And I thought that it would be important to kind of talk about the path of advocacy and how it's affected our lives, but also what we're trying to do with the work of advocacy to kind of push forward opportunities for others.
Yeah. It's funny how advocacy works. It's like we've had so many great people in our past that have lifted us up, helped us realize our potential, who have believed in us before we were willing to believe in ourselves, and how it's circular and how it turns into now we're advocates, helping those who don't have their voice fully functional yet and ready to talk about it, say, look, you deserve these opportunities. You deserve this just like everybody else in the world.
Not everybody's going to want to use their voice and be the person that's going to advocate for this type of thing that we're doing. And that's okay. Like, not all of us need to share our stories. Nobody's required to step or roll into the space of pushing forward ideas that maybe haven't been fully represented in our society. And this is something that we're choosing to do because we see the need. And there's a lot of other advocates out there that are advocating for disability inclusion. But I think it is important to note that this is not a requirement for anyone. We've made the decision to be vulnerable, to sometimes be brave in the path of advocacy, to hopefully create opportunities.
I think it comes from our unique perspective in the disability community, where you and I have both virtually lived every life experience from young toddlers all the way to adults, and how it was to be in school and how it was to fit in and how it was to get into dating and how it was to get your first job and all the different struggles that there have been in life. And we're still seeing today with being successful. And how do we find entertainment that's willing to be inclusive for people with disabilities? How do travel accommodations work? How do hotels, how do rent-a-cars? Every single situation, whether we're going to the grocery store or just out pushing our dog, people are watching us. And you say this all the time in your speeches, and it makes us bridges for all to see what's possible in this world. That's where I think the advocacy, you and I have both talked about it, and we talk about it all the time, is how can we share our life experiences to help make it easier and push forward the possibilities for those that follow us?
Yeah, and I think back to past advocates that were from history, specifically Judy Heumann, who has recently passed away, but she was really the queen of the disability rights movement. She is one of the prominent voices in advocacy for people with disabilities too. And she advanced legislation and Americans with Disabilities Act and all kinds of things that have really given and allotted people with disabilities today the freedoms to be included, to access, to be able to go to work, to go to school, and have accessibility in play and all of that. And we're going to dive into, I'm sure, her story more as this podcast goes, and all of those topics like accessibility and things like that. But when I think of advocacy, one of the quotes that she said that always sticks in my mind was, why do we see disability differently than any other aspect of being human?
That's a great question.
I think that's something that is really important for us to reflect on today and moving forward. Especially our next episode, we're going to talk about ableism and why we need advocacy for people with disabilities in our community and in our society and in the world today is because of ableism. And it's because we're looking at people with disabilities differently than every other aspect of being human. So Judy completely hit it on the nose with that statement. And through advocacy, through using our voices and sharing stories of humanity, we start to see the humanity in each of us.
We build this message together and we talk about it all the time. And one of the great points is that disability is not a them conversation. It's an us conversation. It's our common ground. It literally crosses every gender, racial, cultural line there is. And disability is going to touch our lives, every one of our lives in some way, shape, or form and another over our lifespan, whether it's temporary, permanent, all these different things. So it's really our common ground. And it's the largest marginalized group in the planet, 15% of the people, 1 in 4 Americans. And talking about the laws like the ADA and Rehabilitation Act and all the things that are happening, Title IX, affirmative action, all these things are great to just share about how we need to celebrate them and lift them up, because it's not about dividing and giving opportunities to people that don't deserve it. It's about giving opportunities to people that don't have the opportunities, that have been traditionally excluded in life. You know, it's going to be awesome because we can talk about how it is all over the world too.
Let's bring awareness to blatant exclusion. Let's realize that that's literally been there forever. And I think that like through advocacy, we'll start to inspire and shift traditional ableistic mindsets in the hopes that we're creating space for everyone in the workplace, in educational settings, in opportunities. I'm hoping that this podcast is going to be another place for all of us to have the realization that we're all different. We all have things that we need to push through to advance. We all face adversities. We all face fears. What is the power in overcoming that and pushing through it to get to the next one? I'm excited to be on this journey. I'm super happy that you're supporting me and being my partner on this journey.
I think that this is great and important because of the fact that it gives the opportunity to talk about disability and inclusion of people with disabilities on a regular basis. The more we talk about it, the more natural it becomes. It's like me as an athlete, the more I practice, the better I get at it. Your podcast and your platform and the people that are hiring you and hearing the message and your blasts on LinkedIn and social media and all of this stuff. And now your podcast is just creating more of the conversation. Kudos to you. And thanks again for including me.
You finally made it to the stage, sweetie.
I can't wait to be your favorite fan.
Thank you so much for joining, sweetie. I really appreciate it. But for today, this is a wrap. So grateful again for you all to sit in and be a part of the first episode of Pushing Forward with Alycia. This podcast is going to be about disabling ableism. It's going to be about overcoming adversity, and it's going to be about reaching goals and dreams and believing impossible. Each week, we are going to explore current events. We're going to explore resiliency. We're going to explore successes, failures, all of it. This is Pushing Forward with Alycia, and that's how we roll. If you're an employer who would like to learn more about disability inclusion in the workplace, lessons on ableism, and how accessibility can drive innovation in your company, please check out my micro training series at AlyciaAnderson.com. That's ALYCIA Anderson with an O.com. Click on micro learning.